But imagine if we had a structured way of doing it. Imagine if every bill passed in Parliament has the input of grassroots women, and after it is passed, it is interpreted, it is dissected for the grassroots women. That is why we are gathered here today, right? So let us give him a better clap. No. Is this... Okay, she wants to help.
I think when she said we give him a better clap, I think we need to give him a 5 factorial clap. Yes. So I can lead. So 5 factorial. You start with 5. Then 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Perfect. We have seen, right? Yes. Okay, so let us do this. So 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1. Thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate the work you've done for Kenya. The program says we should break out into breakout sessions, but I don't know whether you'd like to make your remarks now. Thank you very much. So let us stand up and invite him to the front as he comes to give his remarks. We can clap. We can clap until he gets here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. That's a great way to start the morning. Very, very good for my ego. But I have to remember always to keep myself humble. So we have honorable members of KEWOPA, distinguished representatives of women rights organizations. I think I've met many of you. I see some familiar faces. Esteemed partners and guests, good morning. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you here today. These are some of the most fulfilling and interesting events I get to attend, I can tell you, and a lot more interesting. And it's really a pleasure to be in a room with such dynamic and committed women leaders. You could feel that energy already. Champions of women's rights, partners from across Kenya, and thank you for the kind words. Indeed, Canada is incredibly proud to stand alongside you as we work together to promote women's leadership and gender equality in the country. I think it goes without saying you understand this, but I'll say it anyway. Over the past 5 years, Canada has made significant investments to enhance women's participation in leadership roles in Kenya. I think you're our return on investment. We have witnessed remarkable growth in the number of women stepping forward to seek leadership positions in politics, civil society, and business. This progress inspires not only pride, but it shapes our future programming because we want to build on this momentum. However, we understand that true leadership extends beyond mere numbers. It is about ensuring women leaders have the support, the platforms, and the resources necessary to succeed and affect change. This is why Canada is deeply invested in collaborating with women's rights organizations, and we have been for a long time. Through our work with the women's rights organizations, we have seen a remarkable awakening of women's participation in leadership, especially at the grassroots level. This movement is vital as it brings the voices of women from all corners of the country into leadership discussions, ensuring that no woman is left behind. And I don't think I need to tell you, but we remind ourselves and I remind people at home a lot, so we can keep this kind of programming going. When grassroots women are empowered, they become powerful agents of change. They influence their communities.
Recording in progress.
That's good. They challenge the status quo. They ensure that issues affecting them and their families are addressed. In this, women's rights organizations play a crucial role. Their networks and their knowledge are key to unlocking the potential of grassroots women in Kenya. But as with any great movement, the success of this relies on partnerships. And that is precisely why we're gathered here today, to unite the two of the most influential groups of women in Kenya, Kiwopa and women's rights organizations, to forge a collaborative path forward. Kiwopa members, you are the elected leaders, the pinnacle of women's representation in this country. You hold positions of power and influence. However, as we all know, effective leadership, I heard that just now before I spoke, depends on strong and engaged constituency. And this is where the women's rights organizations come in. These organizations champion women's voices at the grassroots level. They are the ones driving change in villages, towns, and across Kenya. They are your natural allies. That is why we are here today, to establish the foundation for a partnership framework between Kiwopa and women's rights organizations. I see one of those esteemed MPs just entering the room. Welcome. We aim to create something that will outlast today's discussions, a collaboration that will propel the women's movement in Kenya forward, ensuring that women's voices are central to every aspect of society. We believe in this vision, we're committed to it. We are ready to align our programs and funding to facilitate its realization. Canada is there to support you every step of the way. And we're rooting for you, and we're here to help us make this vision a reality. I have no doubt that today's discussions will be rich and productive, and I sincerely hope that by the end of this meeting, we will have a framework that not only strengthens the partnership between Kiwopa and women's rights organizations, but also informs our engagement, Canada's engagement moving forward. This is a significant moment, and the work we do here today will have lasting implications for women's leadership, gender equality, and the overall empowerment of women in Kenya and beyond. I'm just going to go off script for a little bit here to talk about something that's perhaps connected. Over the last few weeks, my office, we've been meeting and having discussions with representatives of the Gen Z group, movement, whatever we want to call it. Many of them are women, very impressive young women, and very impressive men who are committed, I think, to women's rights and equality. So I would encourage all of you, especially those of you who are members of parliament and elected and part of the government structure, to engage with these people. And I hope that you all do some thinking, I'm sure you have been already, about what's going on in the country, because it's both very encouraging and uplifting on one side and incredibly discouraging on the other side. We're seeing bright young people who are being incredibly brave, protesting peacefully against some abuses of their government, and we're seeing a reaction that is very disproportionate from the government. People have been killed. I think that's, we can't move around that. That is a fact. The numbers are up for debate, but the government has acknowledged that people have been shot to death. People have been arrested, including last night, one of the representatives with whom we met a few weeks ago, arrested. Nobody knows exactly why. Sometimes they're not actually arrested, they're just abducted. They're being followed, their phones are being tapped. There is now Kenya, and this is a sad thing to say, has a secret police force that is monitoring these people. We know what happens when they protest. They're being labeled as criminals when they're not criminals. So I'm a guest in this country. I'm probably overstepping what I should say, but it's nothing that isn't readily apparent. Much of it, the government accepts is being done and doesn't deny. So where does that leave you as women leaders, women parliamentarians, representatives of women rights organizations? You're fighting the good fight to be represented, but without supporting these brave people, and I think some of you are them, that there is overlap and duplication. The change that you fought for is going to be suppressed. The IEBC has not yet been properly funded. People can't register as citizens even, so therefore they can't register to vote. And there are a lot of challenges facing Kenya. On the plus side, the fact is, with all of the disturbing authoritarian actions that have been taken, Kenyans are allowed to protest. They have made their voices heard. But I think all of you, I can't do it, as I say, I'm a guest here, have to reinforce that point through the various channels that you have. That what is happening now is not where any of us want to see Kenya going. To have young people shot on the streets is not the Kenya that any of us internationally perceive as the country with whom we want to work. And we have great hope that this trajectory will change. But we hope it can be done peacefully and without sacrifice of people's lives and human rights. So, sorry, that was off script, but I think it needs to be said, and I hope all of you will take it into account in your thinking, because I know you're here as women parliamentarians, Kawoba, and here as women's rights organizations. But without these basic freedoms that are being denied people to hold their government to account, we can't get anywhere. No change will happen. Yeah. You know, when we spoke to them, I guess I'll stay off script for another moment, they said there's no opposition, which is a very sad aspect of a democracy. Democracies thrive on opposition. And what they said is, the people are the opposition. They are the opposition. I guess many of you are. And in that case, the people are being pitted against their government, and that is not an ideal situation by any means. So, I guess I just heard I'm being recorded. I hope I hope my recording won't necessarily go viral. I would ask that it not. But on the other hand, these are all issues that everybody knows about, that are very much in the public domain, that are being spoken about, and really go to the basic human rights and freedoms that are in your constitution, and for which Kenya has been known and for which Kenya has fought extremely hard over many decades. So I do hope that all of this will be seen as a seminal point, a turning point here in Kenya, and that you as women leaders have a responsibility to ensure that it takes the correct turn and not the wrong turn. I do wish you great deliberations today. I know you're here to talk about your partnership, a very, very important partnership, which we fully support and of which we're greatly encouraged. And I know that, as at any time in any country, the events that are taking place around us shape how you take your direction and make decisions. I thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Asanteni sana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And I think the Gen Z protests were a reminder of who we are as a people and the power that if we came together, we are capable of achieving. And so this gathering today is a reminder of that. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And I think there is something that he has committed to us, that Canada is committed to continuing to support us. So the ball is in our court. We have to come up with a framework so that it will be easier for Canada to continue supporting us. Tutaangusha kweli? Are we going to let ourselves down? I would also now like to recognize the presence of Miss Janine Coker, the head of cooperation at the Canadian High Commission. Karibu sana. The next person I'm going to recognize, I think it's important for me to mention that I vied in the last election as a woman rep for Nyeri County. I did not win, but it was such a beautiful experience of learning and growth, and that is why this conversation is extremely dear to me as a young woman who vied. And so when I see efforts being made to ensure that more and more women, particularly young women, because it's hard for women to vie, but it is twice as hard for young women, single and married, to vie. And so this next woman has inspired me a great deal. She has fought many battles in politics, but she never dies. She always rises up and comes out stronger, like a true phoenix that she is. Join me in welcoming Honorable Beatrice Elachi, who is currently the only elected female member of parliament in Nairobi County. You know, that is not small. And anytime I think of her, I ask myself, what is your excuse? And truly, I have none. Please come and give you a remark. Is also the deputy chairperson of KEWOPA. Karibu. Makofi jameni, until she gets here. Tumechoka kwani? Being the only elected female member of parliament in Nairobi is no small thing. Karibu.
Thank you very much. Give her a round of applause. You know, I'm standing here and wondering, so what do I say? Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Your Excellency, the Ambassador, the High Commission of Canada, Janine, the women leaders who work with all our women in the grassroots, members of parliament present. Today, we stand here to thank God that the journey we started many, many years, and we are still on this journey, is a journey that we can see achievements, see disappointments, but more importantly, forge for a future that we can say very soon, we will see the real fruits of this journey. And so it is my gratitude to just appreciate Canada for standing with us for the many years. And I think for the gains we have seen for the last 15 years, I will tell you, Canada has been with us on that journey. And especially for us who vied in 2022, we will never forget that support, that everyday call from Janine, from Daisy, and everyone who worked with Canada in our global program to just see us where we are today. And so it is for us, because we have used those who have been there. We are stepping on their shoulders, and we need others to step on our shoulders as we move ahead. So this program, as we start, my prayer will be that women organizations can go back and reflect and look at the history where we started. When you look at how women organizations, that time, the caucuses that we had, they were serious in the movement of women. And they worked very closely with women leaders. Maybe it is us women leaders who have become more busier than that time, I don't know, or we have become more unavailable, which we need to, which is wrong. But that is where we need to go back to understand how they ensured they worked closely with political women, with women on grassroots, and every year we had a convention to bring all together to see where we are headed, how are we headed to one election to the other. Now maybe because we had affirmative action seats, that's why we have retrogressed. We are thinking, oh, we are there, we achieved, we have 47, we have I don't know what. No, we are not. In fact, while I appreciate the president, I will say he's one person who is really retrogressing us because he doesn't appreciate women leadership at all. And I've always told you. Because if he appreciates today, we would be having a CS of women.
Yes.
Where is the CS of gender?
Yes.
So where are the women organizations?
Yes.
Why are we not asking him?
We did.
No. Those days, ask Daisy, when I was a consultant, we would scream on those streets right now. My president would be wondering what just happened and why are the women mangamangering in this street? So we have lost that. We wait for others to do. When you get the resources from Canada, you become comfortable. And I would say here, without fear of doubt, we have a program, a SEPA, or what is it called, Daisy? Because even the name is now going. I want to say that program is a letdown to us because it's not doing, it has now gone to empower staff and it forgot it was supposed to empower both so that staff can appreciate members who are women. So that is a program we have to relook and see how we go back, half of it to go back to the women organization, either to Crown, and so we pick it from there and see how, or through Crown and Kewapa for us to now pick this program. It's a very fantastic program from Canada, but I can see it fizzling and getting lost in Parliament. And even if you ask who are the staffs who are being given empowerment capacity, you won't find them. Why? Because Parliament has a structure that is very difficult to work with. And if you say you are empowering a staff, let's say, for example, in a committee of health, next year, that staff won't be in committee of health. We rotate them because we say you cannot be comfortable in one committee and find yourself now enhancing to become no. So in Parliament, staff are rotated every year. So whether we are building that capacity, it will just go to an individual person and you'll find yourself wondering, so why were you empowering for them to support women to bring great legislation, understand what is happening, petitions that we need, pushing even the 2/3, and that's where we are. So for me, this program where we want to now bring back that organizations where women can stand in and say, we work with women politicians in this area and this area, and your program is clear. And when you're doing your program, remember to call all those women in that region so that you don't find yourself on a pull and push and everyone wondering what is next. And if we want to achieve, we must, if we work with grassroots women, who are now the Gen Zs and the rest, then it is for us to identify in the organizations, who are these that we are pushing forward? Who are these that wants to vie? Where are they vying? So one will tell you, I want to vie as member of Parliament, fine. But I always tell people, don't go to a place where you might find yourself again struggling. Just start. There's nothing different. By the way, I've been a speaker in county assemblies, and I'll tell you, and Mheshimiwa has been there. There's nothing different between the two. Salaries, I mean, per diems are even more in the county assemblies. I've never understood that one. So I don't know whether it is the money they are looking for, the what. This side, the moment you are elected, I am telling you, when you are at an age of young, And now you enter, especially when you are a woman rep, you find it so tough for you on the ground now when people start bashing you. And especially when you come from a community where they have not elected even one woman in a constituency. You are the only woman. Oh, no. You go, you ask them from the north. They've never given us a woman except Sophie, who they brought and they removed very fast. Yes. And ask the counties like Kisii, ask counties like Western. I am telling you, when you enter a meeting, you're wondering. So we must come out of this thing of being nominated at the county assembly to elected, if we want to use the resources of Canada well, that we can prove for once we can have 400 women elected as MCAs, which we have never for the last 15 years since the new constitution, 13 years now. So as I finalize, that should be our goal. How do we ensure women are elected? How do we ensure 67 women will be elected in the National Assembly so that we get out of this 2/3, 1/3 being told this and this? So with that many and few, I wish you well. I wish you well in the program, and I hope we will work together and work for Kenya and Kenya as one. God bless you.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa. She's touched on a very critical point of the county assemblies. I constantly ask myself, why is it that members who are nominated in the county assembly, very few are elected when they vie? I think there is an issue that we need to figure out. The next speaker is also a woman I really celebrate. For those who's coming, my name is Wanjohi Njoroge, and I'm truly honored to be facilitating this session. The next speaker is a phenomenal woman who I truly admire. I'm a product of many, many women. Her name is Daisy. I can see her standing. Let us clap for her. She's doing amazing work, and she's done amazing work for many years in the women's movement. Karibu sana Daisy. We clap until she gets here. Asante. She's representing the Women Rights Organization.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much, Wanjohi. Let me say all protocols observed, or I should singularly recognize His Excellency High Commissioner Thornley and Janine, who likes to be very inconspicuous, but is a major powerhouse. And I think that we really need to acknowledge that. Her commitment to women's empowerment and the women's rights movement in Kenya is unparalleled. We are adopting you as what do you say? Honorary Kenyan. Yes. And we also have Kimani, who is a he for she. The guy who works behind, he's the guy who makes things happen, you know? And he's so diligent. And I think a lot of the time we really don't get to celebrate you, Kimani. So I just want to acknowledge you. And Linda, who is not here, who we also want to recognize in absentia, Linda Kagota, who is also from Global Affairs Canada. I think the women's rights movement in Kenya, women leaders, we owe a huge debt to Canada. I was telling Janine one time that there are donors who give you very little money and they shout from the rooftops, and you would think that they have given you a packet. But the kind of support that Canada gives to the empowerment of women in Kenya, and that's not, we are talking about here, we are just sitting here as the women leaders and women's rights movement, but their support goes across. They support government programs. They have external, there's so much that they do. They have a huge footprint in this country. And so we really need to celebrate them and to appreciate them, and also to appreciate the commitment that the High Commissioner has made for continued support. I'm very honored to be here with you. I want to appreciate also my good friend, Beatrice. When Beatrice was talking about how when she was doing consulting, even before Beatrice, you did the consulting, but before we did consulting, we used to be the KYMs. You know, it begs reminding young people that older people are not born old. You know, and Professor Ajiko Kabira is the one who likes saying that because, you know, young people come and we were like you. You think you know everything, you're the ones with the answers, because you have the energy. And one time she really rebuked them and she said, by the way, you know, we were not born old. Okay? So, you know, youth is really just a phase that you're passing, but it's an important one because with that energy, there's so much that you can do. And we did a lot of work in terms of working together with women in leadership, women in parliament especially. And we didn't even have the benefit. I know maybe some of you, Gen Z, you young people, you can't believe that there was a world where there were no mobile phones, there was no internet, and you just had to get things done. You had to do that. There was no chat GPT, you know, so you had to do the research. You had to do the writing, and those days there were no computers. I think we used to use Tipex, you know, to white out the you know, to correct the mistakes on your, you know, writings. And you did the matatus and everything, and you just had to get things done. We did it, you know, and it was fun, and it was effective, and we really had a very vibrant movement, and we must recreate that. We must go back. You know, I like what Professor says is that sometimes as a women's movement, we have the river, you know, gets tributaries, and just like the Nairobi River, I think when the flooding came the last time, remember, there were places along the Athi Plains where homes were completely flooded, you know, but it turns out that they were on a river plain, that the river had kind of like forgotten about it, you know, and guys went and built, and they built marvelous homes and everything. But when the rains came, the river remembered its course, and what happened? Anything on its pathway was swept away. And the women's movement is like that. Sometimes it goes, you know, you hear people saying, the movement is dead. It's not. We have more women in leadership today than we've ever had. But we just need to reorganize. We need to come back. We need to remember our pathways. You know, we need to go back. We need to come back, and we need to be strong so that we're able to sweep away, you know, those things that have found place where our pathways are, you know? But to do that, we have to be able to do it collectively. There's no way we can be scattered. And so we need to find that unity of purpose. One of the things I always like to remind women is that as women are discriminated against because they are women, okay? You are not discriminated against because you are Muslim or because you are a certain tribe. There is no tribe that does not have an exclusionary mechanism for women. There is no tribe. So it doesn't matter if a Kikuyu comes and oppresses you, a Luo. There in the Luo culture, there is an oppressive Nini. So as you fight your fellow woman, you are fighting yourself, you know? And so we need to understand that the discriminations against women are built into systems. It's actually systemic. But it is possible to change and re-socialize communities to understand the value of women as human beings. Yesterday, I was at a meeting where we were talking about climate change, but they talk about women as special interest groups, right? And I've said, and I keep saying this, and it's important that as women we know this, women are not a special interest group. Women cannot be a special interest group. If you make up over 50% of your population, if we are a special interest group, what would that make men? And they are fewer than us. Let me explain to you what a special interest is. Special interests are interests that are not universal, hence that they are special, okay? They are not universal and don't apply to everyone. And so special interests can be denied. But there are those interests that are universal. They are called human rights. And women's rights are human rights, right? So the demands that we make for equal access, equal opportunity, equal consideration, equal enjoyment of rights, whether we are women, young people, like, what do women want? Women are being asked to justify why they are entitled to the same political rights as men. You know, what do women want? Oh, women want free things. Oh, women want... Let me tell you, that argument has always been there. So you must remember, what we have in the Constitution today is there because the women's rights movement organized and were very deliberate. They took advantage of opportunities that were presented. And this is why it's so important for us to be able to tell our history, and we don't tell it well, okay? So that every time women ask for something, it's like women are coming to reap where they did not sow, and yet it is not true. Because women have been active every step of the way. You can be sure if it were men alone, there's nothing. Let me tell you, if you know the fights that we fought, just to even safeguard what came, first of all, to get what was put in what was the Bomas draft, which became now the foundation for all other the drafts, finally, the Constitution 2010, we used to have to just fight to safeguard the women's gains. Just that. We'll tell them, do your politics, this one don't touch. You know, there is one MP one time who came with a proposal saying that this 1/3 for women is too much, that it should be narrowed down to 5% for women to share between women, youth, and persons with disabilities, 5%. This is a true story. I don't even want to say who it was because he is now late, but just know. Let me as we go, because Wajohe is looking at me, yes, time. I want to talk to you about what Maria Nzomo talks of as the 3 A's of women's representation, right? 3 A's. And it's important that you remember this because this matters in this conversation. First A, access. That we are able to access those leadership and decision-making spaces. And access has already been provided, right? The constitutional framework provides access. We have the 47 women, and you can be sure if those seats, if the Constitution didn't say 47 women who shall be elected from the counties, even men would say they can represent women's issues. I know in Northeastern, they actually, in 2013, the first election, the elders were like, no, women are not supposed to be leaders. And so can a man take this seat? If the Constitution was not specific to say women, men would be there, okay? But that's important. Let me tell you, because I hear sometimes you young people saying, scrap those 47 seats, right? Oh, even when the Gen Z were doing their protests and they had the list of demands, one of the demands was scrap the 47 women rep. And I was like, where did women rep now come into this place? Like, how is it Ruto must go but scrap women rep? I was like, how is this connected? But you see, you underestimate the power of socialization bias. Okay? There is a socialization about the place of women, how gender is constructed within culture. And gender within culture and tradition does not construct power around women. Okay? Doesn't. Any power, leadership is not for women. That's why women are seen as children, weak people, weak-minded, emotional, it doesn't give power to them. And so people grow up with this. And even till now, when you look at our world around, they don't even try to show, they'll show women when they are fighting, But nothing, even something like, think about something like Royco Juicy Mix. You all know Royco.
Yes.
See, we have been told women are the cooks at home, in the kitchen.
Yes.
But just look at that ad. What does it tell you? It is the man who goes to the market to look for those ingredients.
Yes.
And he smells and then he formulates this fantastic formula that then, now, it is The women now, he cooks, he even cooks. And then the women and the children come to taste. You know that communicates. When they tell you Ariel with, it's Omo with the power foam. The scientists in the lab making power foam and releasing the dirt from the clothes. And then they have a line of women on either side with buckets and a white sheet. These ones will wash with power foam, these ones will, all of them are women. But the scientist is who?
The man.
These things communicate. Socialization bias. Okay? So, access is there. But socialization bias has become a problem because while the Constitution says we must have no more than 2/3 of the same gender, the men are like, why? Why? So, but we have access. Even those of you who are nominated, whether you are nominated in the Senate, whether you're nominated in the National Assembly or in the county assemblies, you have access. Okay? The next A is agenda setting. Now, that's where we have failed. Okay? And it's good, it's important to know where things are not going right so that we can correct it. So on the issue of agenda setting, we are not doing well. Because today, if you ask what is the women's agenda or what is the gender agenda, it's everything and nothing, right? But agenda setting, what agenda are we setting? Now in 2015, we did a peer-to-peer trip to Rwanda. What is the magic there? How come you guys are getting there? First of all, of course, there's the political will. However, they are also organized. Do you know that women in the legislature, women in the executive, women in the public service, and women in civil society come together to agree on an agenda of the issues that they want to address, right? So that the women's rights movement are doing their thing, the women in the legislature are doing their thing, and they get the support that they need, and the women in the executive do their thing. Now, this is where we have failed. We've not been able to come together. That is one of the things. When Beatrice was talking about how we used to work together, we worked very well with the women in parliament and the women's rights movement. We would even write submissions for the women members of parliament and run to parliament, give them, and then sit in the gallery and wait and hear them, on the floor, deliver those remarks, do the research for them and everything, okay? But let's also appreciate the times have changed, right? They've changed significantly because even at that time, KEWOPA wasn't really there. KEWOPA came later, and today we have KEWOPA. And let me tell you, this organization, it's an organization, Sindio Mercy. But let me tell you, the potential of KEWOPA to be able to deliver the women's agenda through legislation and policy is huge and untapped, okay? Because what it does, it brings women in a bipartisan way to discuss issues around women, okay? So the power of KEWOPA remains untapped, okay? Then we have the women caucuses at the counties, right? Forget that they call you flower girls, doesn't matter, you are there. They can't remove you, you are there. So we need to be able to have an agenda, a national agenda, a county-based agenda, and, individualized agenda. But we don't do that because we don't come together. Ideally, we should actually have an annual meeting, like literally, we should have an annual meeting where we meet heads of county caucuses, those are 47 caucuses, bring together the KEWOPA, women's rights movement. It won't even be, we can be like, 100 of us. I mean, that's not that many, and sit down and come up with an agenda and agree to be bound to that agenda. And you go. Then you have troubleshooting mechanisms. These are the challenges that we're having. And because of devolution today, we have women's rights organizations in every county, right? And we have a fantastic resource center that has mapped organizations across the counties. In all the 47 counties, we have women's rights organizations. So if you don't know where they are, we can tell you there's this organization and we can work together to set an agenda so that we know what is happening, we know how to troubleshoot, okay? So that is agenda setting. The other is accountability. Let me not hear any woman here saying, you got there on your own steam. You didn't. You did not. That space has been fought for by the women's rights movement. Men have not given you that space. It is because of the fight of the women's rights movement that any space is there. And so, women in leadership need to know that they have to be accountable. Now, we can argue that men are not accountable, but we are not talking about men, we're talking about ourselves. Okay? We need to have accountability measures. You know why? Because every time we don't, if we are not strong together, then we are weak individually. Okay? So, this thing of not being accountable, of people saying, me, I'm the one, I spent my money, I negotiated within my party. The fact that there was even a space for you to negotiate, for you to be a nominated MCA or a nominated member, is because that space was fought for. So you do owe it to the women's rights movement, for us to be able to work together. And so we are able to come together. We need to. Kimani talked about building a vibrant movement, right? We must build that movement. You know why? Because in as much as there have been many efforts to implement the 2/3 gender principle, there have been as many to remove it, right? You remember the latest one, which was BBI? BBI was getting rid of the nominations at the counties. They were phasing them out. In fact, now that people have understood the power of the counties, that they actually are legislative houses and mini governments, people are focusing there. So they're like, who are all these women? Because majority of the women who hold position are nominated, right? Are nominated women. But we are able to work with those nominated women, begin to identify seats that we can flip. So for now, we must work for 2027, okay? 2027, we need to agree. We know how many women we need elected in the 290 seats so that we don't have a problem with the top-up. If we get a minimum of 64 women, we are home and dry, okay? In the National Senate, if we get 5, we are home and dry. We need to work on the MCAs. And since we already have women leaders there, how many seats can we flip with the women who are there? Nikki Malizia. I was supposed to talk about gender responsive legislation, right? So, accountability. So the 3 A's are access, agenda setting, and accountability. You are not paying attention, I mean. Now, let me say this. So, what is gender responsiveness? Gender responsiveness really is taking into account the implications of any action to the different groups, men, women, boys, and girls. You've always heard gender is not women. Of course, if you look, it looks like women, but only because women are the excluded. And so women are constantly fighting to be mainstreamed into the main. So it's accounting for the differences between them and putting in measures to ensure that everyone is able to enjoy actions. Let me give you an example. Like sanitary towels for school-going girls, okay? So the government says free primary education. So it's free, access for everybody. However, there are those who are period poor. And because they are girls, they menstruate every month. And sanitary towels are not cheap. So they can't afford it, they can barely feed themselves. So while education is free, these girls, every so many days in a month, can't go to school because she has to sit while she menstruates. So we have women members of parliament, because it is women members of parliament who brought this up and said, government must make sanitary towels accessible to girls for free, so that they can enjoy the benefits of that free primary education. So we have equitable measures to be able to allow that access, right? The other thing is ensuring equal opportunities, right? Ensuring legislation does not discriminate, but promotes equity, right? And we have many bodies that do that. However, KEWOPA would be central to that. And that's why I keep saying that KEWOPA is very powerful. every piece of legislation, whether it's a legislation or budgets, should actually go through KEWOPA. We talk about public participation. We should be able to sit with KEWOPA to look at budgets and look at how those budgets would affect us. Gen Z, I know one of the things they complained about were women, because they said, how come women in parliament were so silent when the finance bill came up? Apart from Gathoni wa Mushomba, the women in parliament didn't say much. Mercy later on told me that KEWOPA actually raised issues, but of course it was not heard, right? But what were the issues? The implications on the heavy taxation, making women more poor, bringing women out of employment, because women already have a very loose relationship with the labor market, right? So the minute you increase taxation, companies would opt to do what? To let people go. And who goes first? The lower rungs, okay? The implications of taxation on food, on agriculture, where women are. So, those kind of things. So when you're doing gender responsive legislation or gender responsive policies, you must ensure that the measures that are put in place do not discriminate or even exclude certain groups of people. So having said that, and with this genie on my shoulder, let me stop there. But let me also appreciate this meeting, and I look forward to us building, or let me say rebuilding, a relationship with KEWOPA, and that is women members of parliament, because women members of parliament also don't sit pretty. You can't take a position contrary to your party, you get into problems. So if we as the women's rights movement can be the wind beneath their wings, you know how the tribes operate. You touch our tribesman, we say, hey, Mtuetu. As women, we need to defend women, our tribe women, so that when a woman speaks and we agree, we say, yes, she should not be touched, the politicians will pay attention. And there are many things that are happening. So we are happy to collaborate together with the women members of parliament, but we must start the journey to 2027 now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daisy. The honest truth is that I can listen to her the whole day, because she's an absolutely brilliant woman with immense history and experience in the women's movement, right? She's reminded us of our power, and she's reminded us that we are really not disadvantaged people, because we are more than the men. And if we appreciate our power and take advantage of the power represented here today, 2027 can truly be different. Which has a big problem, because if you look at the numbers, when you look at the gubernatorial seat, the more women coming out to vie for the gubernatorial seat, the more women are being elected. Similarly, when you go to the members of parliament, the same is happening. But at the Senate, yes, there are more women coming out as candidates for the senatorial seat, but only 3 have been elected in the last election and the other election. So I believe there is a problem and we can work it together. We are getting into one of the most exciting sessions, but I have a few announcements. One is that the water is where Rosemary is standing, and maybe she can wave. That is where the water stand is. Aga Khan University is a zero plastic university, so it's important to respect that. The other is that any parking ticket shall be validated. Kina mama hoy! Hoy! Kina mama hoy! Hoy! Ah. Kina mama hoy! Hoy! Kwani hii pande kuna nguvu hii kidogo, sije kuna nini? Kina mama hoy! Hoy! Mbona tumekasirika? It's a beautiful and powerful day. So we are getting into the meat of the meeting. We said we are talking to one another. That's what the Mheshimiwa told us, right? So, and I think that's very, very important, so that we all contribute. At the center of your table is a topic of discussion. We have legislative analysis. This is one table. There are 2 tables actually discussing this, because it's extremely important. There is capacity building and knowledge sharing. We have community engagement and advocacy. There is resource mobilization. There is a partnership, mentorship programs, and I'm very, very keen on this because I also want to grow into elective politics. The other one is partnership structure and governance. And it's extremely important for us to really give our best to these discussions. How can we make the best out of the power represented in this room today? You have 30 minutes. What are the expected outcomes? I have so many notes. Let me just give you the expected outcomes. Expected outcomes are consensus on the need for a formalized partnership between KEWOPA and women rights organizations, agreement on the establishment of a joint working group to oversee collaboration, identification of key areas for knowledge sharing and capacity building, primarily outline a community engagement strategy, commitment to developing a shared advocacy agenda for gender-responsive legislation, agreement on the need for a mentorship program linking women leaders, women rights organization leaders, and young women MPs, identification of potential funding sources, and agreement to pursue joint resource mobilization, a consensus on the value of the annual Gender Equity Summit, which I think Daisy mentioned, agreement on the next steps and timeline for developing a detailed action plan, and finally, assignment of responsibility for follow-up action post-meeting. Do we have a leader per group? Have we elected a leader who will report back? Because every group will report back. Do you have someone taking notes? 30 minutes start now. Enjoy. I want to hear noise in the room. Constructive noise.